you need creativity to solve problems at work. And if you burn yourself out because you're never allowed to be creative outside of work, you may get to a point, like I did, where I started to just lose motivation for work in general because I had no energy to be creative. And I needed energy to be creative just to do my job. Ever have a really creative idea for something to do at work, only to have it shot straight down? Well, the problem isn't you. It's the culture of the tech industry that we all work in. Today, I want to show you how I learned to express myself more without being limited by the chains of corporations. We're going to cover 3 main points. First, the value of creativity to your career. Second, how creativity can be perceived as a threat in corporate environments. And third, the need for you to preserve your creative energy to pursue your own personal creative projects. But first, let me share a quick story of how creativity got me in trouble in my career and how I learned to regain using it in a way that helped me instead of hurt me. Early in my life, I was a musician in my early 20s, my late teens, and it was the one area of my life where I had kind of unfettered creativity. There was nobody that could really tell me I'm being too creative. It was something that I sort of owned. Now I was in a band. I had other bandmates, but we all were very open-minded. We all let each other and encouraged each other to create. And when I first got into tech, programming in this case, I was really excited to find that, software development, as I'm sure you have experienced too, has a lot of things to learn and a lot of different ways to approach solutions. And so as I started to work in corporate culture, I started to see what I thought were parallels between, my music career, or what I did with my band and my songwriting, and tech. And you fast forward, 10, 15 years after that, and I had put almost all my personal creative energy and creativity into the job. And my personal projects, my music, was basically something I hardly spent any time on anymore. Well, as time went on, I started to get more and more frustrated that the corporations I worked for didn't seem like they really cared about my creativity. In fact, sometimes when I would be creative, they were threatened by it. And eventually I finally came to the realization, this is about 15 years into my career, 15 to 20, right around then I started to really realize this, that I needed to stop putting all my creative energy at the job because of how just kind of, it's threatening again to people. I'm going to talk about this in this episode today, and really reconnect with my need to be creative on personal projects where I don't have constraints, so that could free me up to just not be frustrated with my job and not expect it to offer me more opportunities for creativity than really are reasonable. So first, let's talk about the value of creativity and how it's really not matched by many other things that you can bring to work or into your life as far as fulfillment. And that's the first part of this is when we're all creative, when I'm creative, when you're creative, it often brings a sense of personal fulfillment. When you engage in creative activities, and it doesn't have to be painting or music, it can be building something, it can be writing, it can be making YouTube videos. There are studies out there that show that there's actually a link between the ability to express yourself creatively and happiness. Now, happiness is a fleeting feeling, that doesn't last forever. I sure wish I was happy 24/7. But if I was, I probably wouldn't recognize it. It wouldn't be as rare and as valuable. But, if you never get to really express yourself creatively, you can feel very unfulfilled and very empty. The second big value of creativity is it really enhances your ability to solve problems. Man, has this helped me in my career. When you go to write code, let's say you're a developer, there's multiple ways that different developers can, approach solving the same problem. Meaning, let's say you're building the back end code for some user interface component or some form or web page. 3 developers could all build that, and each one of them, when the end user looks at it, it functions exactly the same. But on the back end, the code, for one developer, it could be a lot simpler. Another, it could be a lot more complicated. So, the more creativity you're able to bring to the job, the more options it really gives you, so that when you have to solve problems, you aren't really relying on just, a fixed box of maybe things that you've learned before. You can really expand your mind and expand your options when you actually apply your creative energy to it. And the third really big value of creativity is that it drives innovation and growth, both at companies and in your life. Some of the biggest breakthroughs personally for me in my life, and just the satisfaction of it or enjoyment that I've had, came when I tried to be a little bit more creative. You've seen in these YouTube videos how I put little guitar ditties, little parts that I've written over the years. And some people like them. Some people hate them. But that was an opportunity for me to be a little bit creative. Now, I didn't do that to please the audience. I did that for fun, for my own personal creativity. And I found that, after making, I think this is coming up on my 170th, something like that, YouTube video, it might be more than that. I was starting to find things were routine around, 80 videos, something like that. And I needed something different to do. And for me, adding guitar into the videos, again, regardless of if you like it or not, it helped me have some kind of enthusiasm and energy for making YouTube videos again. So, when you let yourself be creative, it can really drive new ideas, innovation, but really allow you personally to grow and really rediscover motivation and actually enjoy your job, enjoy your life again. So next, let's talk about how you can try to navigate the difficult things that come up when you try to be creative at work a little bit better. These are mostly based on the mistakes I've made and the areas where I've seen creativity can and can't be applied effectively. The first issue is that most corporations, and I think you know this, they prefer predictability over creativity. So if you try to be creative in a way that other people aren't really sure what an outcome is going to be because you've introduced sort of a new variable, this new thing that you've created, sometimes that can threaten people. And, when I really got into continuous delivery, this was about 10, 12 years ago now, that was one of the things I was most excited about in my career at that point. I was at a consulting agency. And as I started to introduce concepts related to CD or continuous delivery on projects, some of my other colleagues were not used to that being part of our process, and they felt somewhat threatened by it. So you got to be a little bit careful if you decide to be creative in corporate environments. If your new creation or your way you're trying to, introduce new ideas causes some process to be a little bit less predictable than it used to be. I'm not saying don't do it. That would be silly. We have to come up with ideas and innovate. Just be prepared. It may frustrate some people. And that gets to my second point. Sometimes creative people, or when you are creative, you can be seen as a disruptor. You're disrupting people. You're preventing them from getting their work done. You're introducing, complexity or conflict. This happened to me many times in my career as well. When I would basically try to introduce some new idea, it would often be seen as disruptive, like it's getting in the way of the efficiency of the business. And if you ever heard the saying, rocking the boat, this is what I'm talking about. At a company that is really full of fear, they're worried about, let's say, their products, profit, the market, they're operating under a fear mindset, instead of a growth mindset. Those companies can often feel very threatened by creativity because it basically introduces some things that can change, what they're used to, and basically put you into a situation where people are going to see you as being disruptive. I think it's ridiculous. Just look out for it. And finally, I hate to say this, but you got to look out for it. Sometimes there's leadership at companies that will explicitly stifle creativity because it gives them an illusion of more control. If you're in a leadership position, I'm asking you, if you're a leader, you'll relate to this. If not, maybe put yourself in the shoes of one. But, a leader who's concerned about their position, they're worried about other people, maybe taking their job or, getting credit for things, which, separate video, but I think that's ridiculous because ultimately the best leaders should be lifting up their own people, not suppressing them. But if you are a leader that, or one that's operating under fear, they can actually put roadblocks in the way of your ability to be creative. Try to put a box, so to speak, around what you're able to do, the ideas that you're able to bring to other people. They can even squash new ideas before they're shared with the rest of the company. And so, as I talk about in my episodes on persuasion and building trust with management and things like that, the better relationship that you have, if you're an individual contributor with, managers, product management, let's say you are in product management, the better position, the better relationship rather that you have with support, engineering, marketing, all the departments of the company, the better chance that when you are creative, hopefully they're not going to try to get in the way of it and they'll actually support you instead. And hey, if you're in a situation in your career where you're finding you really desire creativity and your job seems to be getting in the way of it, or you're just so tired you don't even know how to be creative, I'm going to talk about that in a moment, consider joining the memberships that I have available. You can join via Patreon or right here on YouTube, a YouTube membership. There's a link in the description and there's a Discord server. I've got a lot of really great people on there who are both career coaching customers of mine and just members of the channel. And if you'd like to just talk with other people about, how you're trying to express your creativity, maybe share stories and ideas for how you can get to have your ideas come to the fore at work without people flipping out, consider joining us. Well, third, let's talk about how can you preserve your creative energy? If you're in this situation where corporate, culture feels threatened by creativity, well, you got to find a way if you're going to be fulfilled in your life to express your creativity somehow. And I think the first part of that is understanding that creativity is a finite resource. I didn't really think about this much earlier in my career. If you work all day and you wipe yourself out, you're not going to have any energy to be creative. So considering how you manage your energy is really important if you want to even be able to express it in the first place. And with that, it's really important that you don't burn out from a creative standpoint, meaning, you put so much energy into your job or your family or everything else that there's no energy left for you to be creative in personal pursuits. Sometimes I've coached people that I've met through my career coaching, and they've given everything in their life to their wife, their kids, or their husband, or their job, and they have nothing for themselves anymore. Maybe they exercise, which is great. Of course, I encourage that. But, when they were younger, they might have been a musician or a writer, or they might have, been really into woodworking or something like that. And they wonder why, their life feels so empty and meaningless. And it's because they haven't really had the conversations with people, both at work and in their life, to say, hey, I deserve to have some time for me too. If you want me to really be a great employee, if you want me to really be a great husband, a great wife, then I have to actually have some time for me to fill myself up creatively. Otherwise, you're kind of getting the worst of me. And ultimately, like I talked about earlier, you need creativity to solve problems at work. And if you burn yourself out because you're never allowed to be creative outside of work, you may get to a point, like I did, where I started to just lose motivation for work in general because I had no energy to be creative. And I needed energy to be creative just to do my job. So the solution to all of this is to really treat your personal time for creativity as important in your life. If you see being creative outside of work as a luxury and something that's not that important, then you're not going to protect your time. You're not going to invest in it. What I've had to do myself, for instance, is I've had to set better boundaries with myself. Now, I'm not working for corporations anymore, but I still do consulting projects. And when I have my clients sign a statement of work, I put in there very explicitly when my work hours are. I typically work part-time when I do consulting these days because I'm doing career coaching mostly now. But I'll tell them like, hey, I'm available, let's say from 8 in the morning until noon. And if they try to contact me at 1, I'll just say, if I'm even around, I'll say, hey, I'm sorry. Remember, these are outside work hours. I'm not available to talk at this time. And the first couple times they might get frustrated, like, man, this person really I wish they'd be more flexible. But you're setting expectations, you're setting boundaries. And if they keep, demanding it or getting frustrated, well, get a different job, get a different contract. But ultimately, you have to be pretty firm to make sure, hey, I got a job. I'm working 40 hours a week. Let's say if it's full time. If you want me to work 60 hours a week, I'm not willing to do that because I need a life. And also you need to be paying me 20% more. Otherwise, this is different than what we agreed for. And then the other thing is just, schedule some time in your life to actually be creative personally. Take some time, for me, I actually need to get better about this myself too. Like, guitar and songwriting is the main thing that I like to do for a creative outlet. And I don't always schedule time for it. Sometimes I'll just, finish coaching, let's say at the end of the day, pick up my guitar, play around for a half hour or an hour. I've got some various printouts of things that I'm practicing, songs, exercises, stuff like that. But I would probably make a lot more progress if I actually scheduled it. And I'd encourage you to do the same. At a minimum, if you can't, just start pushing yourself to give yourself even permission to be creative at all. And this is one of the things that I often help people with through career coaching is sometimes they'll come to me because they're dealing with burnout. They're trying to figure out what direction to go in their career. And through talking to them, they kind of realize that they have no joy in their life anymore because they've given up on all their creativity completely. If that's you, or if you just want to talk to me and possibly need some help, you can also check out a link in the description to read about my coaching as well. But how about you? Have you felt limited at work in how creative you can be? What happened? Have you struggled with balancing being able to be creative at work and your personal life? Do you even have any creative outlets at home anymore? And if not, what are you doing today to try to change that? Leave me some comments and let me know about it. Until next time, thanks.